If you know anything about the cost of space travel, the title of this video might sound like clickbait to you. But if you don't know anything about space travel, the title of this video might sound like clickbait to you. And to be honest, I get it. There's just so much resources being put into spacefaring vessels that it feels like there's absolutely no way to launch rockets at zero cost. But if you're Elon Musk, or the people working at SpaceX, this is not a problem. There are other more important problems, like how to make the tip of their rockets as pointy as possible so that it looks cool. Maybe we'll address that in another video. But in this video, we'll be discussing how SpaceX plans to launch its rockets for free using a program called Rideshare. Welcome back to our channel. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring that bell so you're notified every time we upload a new video. The idea of launching rockets into space at no cost sounds ridiculous because throughout the history of space exploration, it has always cost a lot. NASA in particular has not been very conservative with how much they throw into the vacuum of space over the years. Then SpaceX came along with its cheaper rockets. But not only are SpaceX rockets cheaper to build and launch, they're also reusable. Fully reusable. Add all that together and what you get is NASA ditching their really expensive flights and catching the SpaceX spaceships to get to space. But these flights also cost something, unlike the SpaceX Rideshare program, which will cost SpaceX nothing. So what is Rideshare? Well, it's in the name. Rideshare is a program that lets several payloads share a ride into orbit. And this innovation is targeted at the smallsat industry. Rocket Lab has emerged as the top operator of this industry with its Electron spaceship, which stands at just 18 meters and 1.2 meters in diameter, compared to Falcon 9's 63.3 meter height and 3.7 meter diameter. However, it doesn't need to be big because the smallsat industry deals with shipping small satellites into orbit. Originally, satellites used to be very big and would weigh thousands of kilograms. However, these big satellites are not necessary for simple tasks like gathering scientific data or radio relay. Therefore, the development of miniaturized satellites or small sats weighing below 500 kilograms was necessary. With further advancement in technology, even smaller satellites called nanosats that weigh as low as 10 kilograms have been developed. However, a new problem arose, and this was the fact that paying $50 million, the amount for a SpaceX launch, just to throw an object about the same weight as 3 bricks into space is highly preposterous. But with Rocket Lab's Electron, flights cost as low as $7 million. So it's clear why they boss the smallsat market. However, SpaceX has responded in the way they love to do best, because if anyone knows how to make something as cheap and affordable as possible, it's Elon Musk. Just ask Bitcoin traders. But seriously, what they've essentially done is to make ports available in the payload of their spaceships like the Falcon Heavy, where these small satellites can be attached. When they get into low orbit, they're deployed and the work is done. Rideshare booking is similar to booking an Uber, where you can select the desired orbit, launch date, and weight of your payload, and you'll get an immediate estimate of how much the trip is going to cost you. The cost of a single payload on the Rideshare program is as low as $1 million. There are also costs for add-ons to consider, like a port adapter, a separation system, payload electrical connectivity at the launch pad, fuel for the trip, and insurance. With these expenses covered by the owners of the small sats, SpaceX is launching these rockets at zero cost. After selecting your choices, you are required to make a non-refundable reservation deposit that same day, and the rest of the cost can be covered in 2 separate installments. What's even more impressive is that satellite companies can buy a slot on the SpaceX Rideshare program and sublet it to other smaller CubeSat owners for a fraction of the price, as low as $150,000. This is common practice for companies like Spaceflight Incorporated, and the effect is that the cost of launching these small sats into orbit is very cheap for the owners, but SpaceX gets their money as well. When you consider the fact that the cost of a lot of Falcon 9 flights are cheap due to their full reusability, it becomes clear that not only are these launches free, but there is also profit for SpaceX in this business. And in the past, SpaceX has made use of these rideshare vehicles to launch its own Starlink satellites. Starlink is a low-latency broadband internet system that serves users around the globe with high-speed internet with the use of a constellation of several satellites in low Earth orbit. Starlink is the future of internet connectivity, as it allows you personal access and control to the internet even in rural areas. Although these satellites are quite powerful, Elon Musk and company still managed to produce them at a cost of $250,000, compared to the millions that other satellites of the same class would cost. Starlink is projected to make up a constellation of tens of thousands of these satellites around the Earth. Seeing as this would cost a lot to launch, fitting it into rideshare launches with the cost covered by other satellites is the way to go. And the first rideshare launch had 10 Starlink satellites on the ride. But that's not enough. And there's only so much space that can allow for as many Starlink satellites that the company can squeeze into space for free. And this is where their new spaceship, the Starship, comes in. The Starship vessel completely obliterates the Falcon 9's 63-meter height and 3.7-meter diameter, as it stands at 120 meters and has a diameter of 9 meters. This makes the payload bay of the Starship way bigger than the Falcon 9. For comparison, the Falcon 9 can carry up to 60 Starlink satellites in its payload bay, whereas the Starship rocket will take up to 240 Starlink satellites in its payload bay easily. But it's beyond the sheer size of the vessel. The Starship is not only bigger than any other spacefaring vessel ever made, but it also has cheaper launch costs. It costs about $2 million to launch a Starship vessel. This is not only cheaper than the Falcon Heavy's $50 million, but it's also cheaper than Rocket Lab Electron's $7 million. This is because of the revolutionary materials used in making the spaceship, the absence of long-distance transportation costs due to the factory, testing site, and launch pad being in the same place, and of course, the work ethic of Elon Musk and his team. It's so cheap and easy that SpaceX can get these rockets ready for launch within a week. With the Starship vessel, the cost for a port would go from as high as $1 million in the Falcon 9 to as low as just $5,000. And the great thing is that there will be even more space to fit in Starlink satellites for free in the Starship than in the Falcon 9. Starship may have been built for the interplanetary exploitation and colonization of Mars, but it definitely has some great applications in the smallsat market that will yield economic gains and maybe unseat Rocket Lab from its throne in this sector. Because although the SpaceX rideshare program has helped the company enter into the smallsat market, they still face some challenges that Rocket Lab is suited to take in their stride. And that challenge is time. With the Falcon 9, you have to make sure that payload for any of the SSO, LEO, and polar orbits are filled up before takeoff. This means that no matter when you want to go, you'd have to delay your schedule to meet up with the rest of the satellites on the payload. This is why the first thing you'll specify on the website is the orbit you want and the date you'd want to launch your rocket. Rocket Lab has a much smaller rocket for its own rideshare program. However, if it's a matter of urgency, they also have a dedicated program for single satellite launches for their customers. This costs more than their rideshare program, but because the cost to launch the Electron is way cheaper than what SpaceX would currently require for their Falcon 9, they currently take the lead on this one. At least for now. But we know that Starship launch costs less than the Electron, and so Elon Musk and his team cannot wait for the rocket to be fully functional so that they blow the competition into space. But what do you think? Will Rocket Lab survive the effect that Starship will have on their smallsat market dominance? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, and check out more awesome ones on the Simply Tech channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.